What's up, Lego builders? Welcome back to Coconut Brick Studios. This is going to be the most building focus update of the series so far, and I have big plans. I want to get the entire back half of the tank completely finished, inside and out, which means more interior work and crazy angles, but at this point I welcome the angles. I mean, how much worse can it possibly get? Well, just wait and see, I guess. I'm also going to start work on the cockpit with its lights and guns. There is lots to enjoy, so don't forget to execute Order 66 on that like button, and let's get building. I'm starting with the back half of the tank and not stopping until it's done. The next big thing to tackle are the rear panels. Once again, we're working with some crazy angles. I need to make two panels, one of which angles down into the side, basically matching the opening that I have here. There's also a hatch at the rear of the tank so the clones can get in and out of the tank. So I'm going to build two sections of panels on either end of the mock with a door in between them. I sat down on a live stream and designed two panels for one side of the tank, and now all I have to do is copy that for the other side. That's the nice thing about building vehicles. They're typically two matching sides put together, so I can sit down and take the time and mess up building one side. Then when I have that down, I can just flip on the camera and crank out the other side super easy. Because the first panel on the back is at two different angles, I'm once again turning to my friend, the ball joint. I don't know if a build like this would be possible for me without these bad boys. Alright, I've got the back panels on both sides, and I must say I am very pleased with how they look. Everything fit together pretty well. I mean, there are still some gaps. It's not, perfectly seamless, everything fits together, but honestly it captures the shape that I wanted. Like it looks good when you look at it, and that's kind of, you guys know, that's kind of what I've been going for with this series. It matches the shape that I wanted, and just it feels like it flows with the tank. So I think we're gonna go with these angles for now. Who knows, I may end up changing something next episode. And like, considering the different angles that I had to achieve here, I think I was able to get everything to fit together pretty well. There is some gaps there, there isn't anything down here, but that's okay. We're not really gonna be looking at the tank from the underside. So now that the back's done, I can start working on the door that's gonna open here and then let the troops out, and then that means I'm also gonna be able to work on this middle section. But before I show you guys that, I wanna show you what I was doing on this Saturday's live build stream. If anybody doesn't know, every Saturday I do a building stream for Magito. I decal Galactic Marines, work on Magito, and then this last Saturday I was building this UTAT. So if you're interested, check those out every Saturday, it's a good time. So I got both the gunner stations in now, I got the floor tiled off, I got the seats in. Basically, I finished up the interior for the back of this vehicle. You can see there's the other gunner station right there. Everything is looking great, and I think once I get this middle section on, this back area is done, and it's just going to be the front cockpit area, which is exciting. And speaking of this back roof, my plan is I'm going to stick some plate right here connecting these two side panels together, and then I'm going to tile it off. And then this middle section right here, I'm going to put some tile down right here and then plate in the middle like that, and basically create a lid, almost like a cookie jar, to where I can just pop it off really easily. That will allow me to access the seats, put minifigs in there. You'll be able to see the gunner stations, because I don't want to have to remove the entire roof, because it kind of, it's just going to be kind of a pain to do that, I think, and I think it'll be easier to have two strips that are connected to the vehicle. It'll just make it more secured, more firm, and I don't need the entire thing to come off, because if I can access this much of the tank, I can get in there pretty easily and get the minifigs out. And then another thing I need to do is widen these back panels, because I don't need the door to be 8 studs wide. That's just a massive door, and I feel like that's going to look a little strange. Plus, if you look at the back of the UTAT, this middle section is pretty small in comparison to each of the sides. So I think I'm going to add some extra tile to each of these panels and probably shrink the door down to about 6 studs wide. Now you get to watch me struggle to place 4 2x10 plates. I swear, these parts have a mind of their own sometimes. These plates are going to be the fixed portion of the roof, and the gap in between is where the removable portion will be. So I can get in and access the troop area and gunner stations, hopefully with relative ease. But before I build the rest, I need to adjust the back panels. I'm just making them each 1 stud wider, since the back panels line up with the light bluish gray portion of the roof, and that will make the gap in between them smaller, which is good, because if you look at the reference photo, the middle part of the roof with all the greebling and vents is pretty narrow compared to the sides, and I want to reflect that with my tank. Now for the roof. This middle section is interesting. It's lower down than the rest of the roof for some reason, and has a strip of some kind of paneling, vents, or greebling running the length of it. It's also dark gray, which is nice because that will add some good color contrast to the top of the tank. It looks like the guns are connected to this part of the roof as well, and the light bluish gray portion might be some kind of extra armor added to the top and sides of the main frame to protect the cannon and sides. From a building standpoint, this should be pretty easy. I laid down some tile and plate to lay everything out, and then took a bunch of those 1x2 grills and covered the middle of my panel. I'm also adding a little knob at the center of this so I have an easy way to remove it. Once that's done, I'll repeat that building process on the fixed portions of the roof so that when the lid goes on, it will all look like one solid build. It was a little tricky to get into place at first, but the more I do it, the easier it gets. When it comes to the door, there are a couple of ways I can go about this. I could make a traditional hatch that has a hinge at the top, but the problem with that is when the door opens, it hits the roof at 180 degrees and can't go any higher. This does give the clones enough room to get in and out of the tank, but I just don't like how that looks and I feel like I can do something better. So I made myself a double hinge using some droid arms and brackets that swings up, but also has a second hinge where the door connects to it so I can move it as well. Once I get the door in place, it'll all make sense. Sometimes these techniques I use make a lot of sense in my head, and then when it comes to explaining them, it's like I'm trying to teach advanced math. But you can see now the door can still swing up, but I can also rotate the door up and over the roof and slide it back even further. This will give the clones all the room they need to board and load or unload cargo. There is still a problem, however. The tank is so high off the ground, when the door opens, the floor is about chest high off the ground, so unless these clones have the hops of an NBA player, they ain't getting in. But this is an easy fix. I've got this little railing piece, which also works great as steps, and all I need to do is add a couple of clips and a 1x4 tile, and I have a foldable pair of steps. Once secured to the rear of the tank, it can fold or unfold from down underneath. The last thing to do for the back half is fix the cannons. All I'm doing is adjusting the barrels so they can rotate up and down. I decided that was really important. I didn't want to go to all this trouble making the tank as good as possible and then make cannons that can't even point at the ground. This half of the tank is looking marvelous. Everything fits together so well. I really like how the roof turned out. It was nice that the tank had an indented section of dark gray paneling because it adds a lot of contrast, texture, and detail to the tank's exterior instead of it just being a flat rectangular shell. Plus, it makes the door look better. The roof panel is pretty easy to remove, and that knob does look a little out of place, so I might try shrinking or changing it. If you can't tell, the door is my favorite part of the build so far. I just love the way the double hinge technique came together, and I got inspiration from it from the ATAS I built last week with its foldable ladder. Then there's just something about the way those back panels all fit together that is really pleasing to look at. Let me know in the comments how you think this half of the tank turned out, as well as what your favorite part is. I'm still not super happy with the turrets, but they get the job done for now, and someone suggested switching in the light bluish gray wrenches to match the barrel color, so I might try that. I promised to work on the cockpit, so it's time to turn our attention to the front of the tank. Now there's a lot surrounding it. You have guns, armor, and light, so I'm going to start with those, and if I have time, build the actual part where the driver sits. It looks like there are some sloped armored sections on either side of the cockpit, so I'm going to build those onto the panels that came together last week. Nothing crazy, just some slopes. I'm also going to add some dark red wedge plates for the markings and some trans yellow parts for the lights. I wish we got to see more of this tank in Star Wars. It's really well designed and has such a cool and unique functionality. Just think how cool a Clone Wars episode would have been with galactic marines assaulting droid forces on the snowy planet of Renvar with the support of a couple UTATs. And for how little we see this tank, I feel like its design and features are really well fleshed out. There are two more anti-personnel cannons under the tank, so I'm just going to copy the design I already made for these, and they're fixed cannons, which makes this even easier. The lights are trans yellow parts on a bracket that will go under the front panels on either side of the guns. Now the driver has no need to worry about hitting any deer on the freeways, thanks to his high beams and twin cannons. The front is not quite where I want it to be yet. The things I added today look good. Small things like lights and guns really bring a build to life, but the overall size of the front panels aren't big enough. Whenever I see the front of the UT-AT, I think snowplow with the big wedge-shaped panels flaring out on either side and being bigger and wider than the back half of the tank. But my tank is the opposite. I feel like it gets narrower the closer to the front you get, and the front panels just aren't large enough and don't look very plowish. I do want to finish the tank first before I make any changes though, because the front might just look smaller because it's so unfinished compared to the back, and once all the front panels are in and that big hole is covered up, it might look beefier. And speaking of next week, that could be the final update. This was by far the most building I've ever gotten done in an update, and that snowball of progress is only gaining momentum as there's less designing to do and more building. Next time, I want to try and finish the rest of the tank. Not in its final form, mind you, just I want to get all the panels, guns, repulsors, everything in place so I can see what this thing looks like as one cohesive build and see what needs to be changed or modified. So next episode could be the final update before the finale. All that being said, that wraps up this update. Don't forget to let me know what you thought about everything down below in the comments, and I'll catch you next time. But until then, happy building.